Jai. Jai Shrimad Bhagavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 So today we'll hear from Shrimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 15, Text 34. Yes, Text 34. Text 34. Tad Vam Amushya Paramasya Vikunta Bhartu Tad Vam Amushya Paramasya Vikunta Bhartu Kartum Prakrishtam Iha Dhimahi Mandadhibhyam Kartum Prakrishtam Iha Dhimahi Mandadhibhyam Lokan Ito Vrajatam Antara Bhava Drishtya Lokanito Vrajatamantara Bhava Drishtya Papiyasas Traya Ime Rupavo Sya Yatra Papiyasas Traya Ime Rupavo Sya Yatra Tadvamamushya Paramasya Vikunta Bhartu Kartum Prakrishtam Iha Dhimahi Mandadhibhyam Lokanito Vrajatamantara Bhava Drishtya Papiya Sastraya Ime Ripavosya Yatra Tam Tadvamamushya Paramasya Vikunta Bhartu Kartum Prakrishtam Iha Dhimahi Mandadhibhyam Lokanito Vrajatamantara Bhava Drishtya Papiya Sastraya Ime Ripavosya Yatra Others please.
Tadvam Amusya Paramasya Vikunta Bhartu Kartam Prakrishta Mahi Ihadimahi Manda Divyam Lokanito Vrajatamantara Bhava Drishtya Papiya Sastraya Ime Ripavosya Yatra
Tadvamanushya Paramasya Vikunta Bhartu
Tadvamanushya Paramasya Vikunta Bhartu
Kartum Prakrishtam Iha Dhimahi Mandadhibhyam Lokanito Vrajatamantaro Bhava Drishtya Vidyasya Satraya Ime Rapasvosya Yatra
Tadvamanushya Paramasya Vikunta Bhartu
Tadvamamushya Paramasya Vikunta Kartum prakrishtam ehadhimahi mandadhivyam.
Lokanito vajatam athara bhavadrishtya.
Lokanito vrajatamantara-bhava-drishtya.
Apisyastrya imevi pavosya yatra.
Papiya sastraya imere pavosya yatra. Tadnamamushya paramasya vikunta bhartu. Kartum prakrishtami hadhimahi mandadhivyam. Lokanito vajatamantara-bhava-drishtya. Apiya sastraya imere pavosya yatra. Synonyms. Tat,
Tat,
therefore.
therefore.
Tam,
Bam,
unto these two.
unto these two.
Amushya,
Amushya,
of him.
of him.
Paramasya,
Paramasya,
the supreme.
the supreme.
Vikunta bhartu,
Vikunta bhartu,
the Lord of Vaikuntha.
the Lord of Vaikuntha.
Kartum,
Kartum,
to bestow.
to bestow.
Prakrishtam,
Prakrishtam,
benefit.
benefit.
Iha,
Iha,
in the matter of this offense.
in the matter of this offense.
Dhimahi,
Imahi,
let us consider.
let us consider.
Mandadhivyam,
Mandadhivyam,
those whose intelligence is not very nice.
those whose intelligence is not very nice.
Lokan,
Lokan,
to the material world.
to the material world.
Itaha,
Itaha,
from this place.
from this place.
Vrajatam,
Rajatam,
go.
go.
Antarabhava,
Antarabhava,
duality.
duality.
Drishtya,
Drishya,
on account of seeing.
on account of seeing.
Papiyasa,
Papiyaya,
sinful.
sinful.
Traya,
Traya,
three.
three.
Ime,
Ime,
these.
these.
Ripavaha,
Rivava,
enemies.
enemies.
Asya,
Asya,
of a living entity.
a living entity.
Yatra,
Yatra,
where?
where?
Translation. Therefore, let us consider how these two contaminated persons should be punished. The punishment should be apt, for thus benefit can eventually be bestowed upon them. Since they find duality in the existence of Vaikuntha life, they are contaminated and should be removed from this place to the material world, where the living entities have three kinds of enemies. Responsively, please. Therefore, let us consider
Therefore, let us consider
how these two contaminated persons
how these two contaminated persons
should be punished.
should be punished.
The punishment should be apt,
The punishment should be apt.
for thus benefit can eventually be bestowed upon them. Since they find duality
Since they find duality
in the existence of Vaikuntha life,
in the existence of Vaikuntha life,
they are contaminated
they are contaminated
and should be removed from this place
and should be removed from this place
to the material world.
to the material world,
Where the living entities have three kinds of enemies.
where the living entities have three kinds of enemies.
Srila Prabhupada's purport. The reason why pure souls come into the existential circumstances of the material world, which is considered to be the criminal department of the Supreme Lord, reference yesterday's purport, is stated in the Bhagavad Gita, 7th chapter, verse 27. It is stated that as long as a living entity is pure, he is in complete harmony with the desires of the Supreme Lord. But as soon as he becomes impure, he is in disharmony with the desires of the Lord. By contamination, he is forced to transfer to this material world where living entities have three enemies. namely desire, anger, and lust. These three enemies force the living entities to continue material existence. When one is free, and when one is free from them, he is eligible to enter, These three enemies force the living entities to continue material existence, and when one is free from them, he is eligible to enter the kingdom of God. One should not therefore be angry in the absence of an opportunity for sense gratification, and one should not be lusty to acquire more than necessary. In this verse it is clearly stated that the two doormen should be sent into the material world where criminals are allowed to reside. Since the basic principles of criminality are sense gratification, anger, and unnecessary lust, persons conducted by these three enemies of the living entity are never promoted to Vaikuntha Loka. People should learn Bhagavad Gita and accept the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, as the Lord of everything. They should practice satisfying the senses of the Supreme Lord instead of trying to satisfy their own senses. Training in Krishna consciousness will help one be promoted to Vaikuntha Loka. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Mukhaṁ karoti vachalam pangum langhayate girim jatkripatamaham bande Shri Gurun Dinataranam Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupakadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Pancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripasindhobhya Eva Chapatitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Tadvama Mushya Paramasya Vikunta Bhartu Kartum Prakrishnam Ihadhimahi Mandyadhivyam Lokanito Vichitamantara Bhava Drishtya Papiyasas Traya Ime Ripavosya Yatra. Therefore, let us consider how these two contaminated persons should be punished. The punishment, should be apt, for thus benefit can eventually be bestowed upon them. Since they find duality in the existence of Vaikuntha life, they're contaminated and should be removed from this place to the material world, where the living entities have three kinds of enemies. So these four sages are continuing their reflection from the past couple of verses. Their observations of these two gatekeepers. And these are the innermost gatekeepers. I guess we could infer that they're a little maybe more confidential than the gatekeepers at the first gate. I don't know. But they are very close to the Lord. And we'll see just how close they are to the Lord's heart later. Close enough that they understand his actual desire in having arranged this whole little scenario. Because these are pure beings. As Yudhishthira Maharaj points out, where this is brought up again at the beginning of the seventh canto of the Bhagavatam. Here we're doing a little backstory to get us to Lord Varaha's battle with Hiranyaksha. And in the seventh canto, we'll get a similar backstory to introduce us to the appearance of Hiranyakashipu, Hiranyaksha's brother, and his interactions with the entire universe, but especially with his son, Prahlad. Some differences between the Shrimad Bhagavatam and all other scriptures. There are a number of differences. One is the emphasis on Bhagavan and his devotees. For example, in the seventh canto, I guess the longest presentation in the Bhagavatam of any of the avatars. How many chapters about Lord Nrsingadev in the seventh canto? Anybody remember? Well, I mentioned it last week, I think. Nobody remembers. 10. 10 chapters. Quite long. And if you look in any of the other Puranas where the Narsingha Leela is presented, who's the hero? No. Not in the others. In the others, it's Lord Nrsingadev. In the Bhagavatam, 7 of those 10 chapters are about Prahlada, right? I mean, it's just, he's the hero. Look in the 6th canto, story of Vritrasura. Well, if you look in the other Puranas where this, and the story of Vritrasura, I think goes back to like the Rig Veda. Goes back very far. And who's the hero in all those other presentations of the story of the interaction between Indra and Vritrasura? It's Indra, the king of the Devas. Who's the hero in the 6th canto of the Bhagavatam in that Leela? Vritrasura, great devotee. So we see these differences. There's such a stark contrast between Shrimad Bhagavatam and all the other scriptures. And a big part of it we get beginning from the second canto is this oneness of everything with the Lord. Everything is Krishna because it's Krishna's. I had a discussion with a devotee once who said that another Sampradaya's philosophy was superior to us, superior to Lord Chaitanya's. I was a little surprised. I was more than a little surprised. And I asked why. And they said something, I don't remember, they said something, I can't remember what this devotee said. And I said, well, I don't know about that. Oh, it had something to do about how everything was Krishna. I said, okay, but Lord Chaitanya's philosophy has a little subtle edge on that everything is Krishna's. Oh, everything is Krishna's, so it should be used. I think the way they put it was, everything is Krishna, so it should be used in Krishna's service. And I said, well, Lord Chaitanya's is a little subtle difference there. Everything is Krishna's, so it must be used in Krishna's service. Because everything we see is Krishna's energies, and Krishna's energies are not different from him, so in that sense, everything is Krishna. This is not pantheism, this is panentheism in Western terms. This is the sense that God is at once immanent and transcendent, that God is in this world, in everything in this world, present, fully present everywhere in this world. And what makes it seem otherwise? It's just our vision. Our vision of this duality that the Kumars are decrying in these verses. We'll see that in Bhagavad Gita purport that we'll look at in a few minutes. So the sages are saying, okay, so let's see how these two fellows should be dealt with. If there's some punishment, it should be apt, it should be suitable, it should be fitting, it should be beneficial. We don't punish just for the sake of punishment. We don't call prisons penitentiaries anymore. A place where people just go to feel sorry about their misbehavior, or we try to make them feel sorry for their misbehavior. What do we call them now in the U.S.? Anybody know?
Rehabilitation center.
Nope. Anybody ever been to a prison? I visited friends in the federal prison.
I didn't stay overnight.
They're correctional centers. They're called correctional centers. Where I'm from, Lompoc, California, there's a federal correctional center. Maybe it's a correctional facility, I can't remember now. It's been a while since I've been out there. So the idea is to correct the person, not just to hurt them. And so they're saying, okay, so what would be apt? What would be fitting? What would be suitable? Well, since they're seeing duality, which doesn't fit here, then let them spend some time where that is appropriate, or that kind of duality is appropriate. And what's a natural consequence of that duality? 3 kinds of enemies: lust, anger, and greed. Right? So Srila Prabhupada mentions a verse from the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, and when we talk about these 3 enemies, that's another verse in the Bhagavad Gita. So Srila Prabhupada refers to chapter 7, text 27. Ichha dvesha samuttena dvandva mohena bharata sarva bhutani samoham sargayanti parantapa. Krishna says, O sign of Bharata, conqueror of the foe, all living entities are born into illusion, into delusion, overcome by the dualities of desire and hate. So here we see those dualities that we've been talking about the last couple of days. Us and them, right? With Dhritarashtra, my voice and his voice. Things we like, things we don't like. Things we identify with, things we don't identify. Folks we identify with, and folks we don't identify with. You know, my people who belong to my party, or who go to my church, or who belong to my club, or who are in my family, and others. And this has become, I think, I don't know if it's become a progressively large problem or just a progressively recognized problem over the past few decades, this business of othering. But we see that in Chanakya Pandit's instructions, Chanakya's Niti Shastra, Srila Prabhupada referred to this sometimes. He mostly referred to the first pada of this text. Matrivat paradareshu, paradravyani loshtavat, atmavat sarvabhuteshu yapashati sapanditaha. How do we know someone's actually wise? They have this kind of vision. Matrivat paradareshu. People, women, other than my own wife, not there for me to enjoy. They're like mother. Mother, in any culture that I know of, mother is revered, not touchable. One of the great tragedies of Western literature is when that was transgressed. Anybody familiar with that? Who's the author? This is Oedipus Rex. I know the author, but it escapes me at the moment. Oedipus Rex. Oedipus was a young man sent away from his family. I don't remember the reason because I haven't read this in decades. Sent away from his family for one reason or another. And then he comes back. He's sent away very young, so he doesn't remember his mother and father. So he grows up as a king, and he comes to challenge this king who was his father, unknown to him, and he kills his father and marries his mother. And when he finds out that it's his mother he's married, it's his mother he was lusting after, it's his mother that he married, what did he do? He killed himself, I think. I have to look. I should have checked this out. I didn't think of this before. Maturavat paradareshu paraduravyani loshtavat. Other people's things, like garbage in the street. Not very many people are prone to going around picking up garbage from the gutter, cigarette butts or whatever, litter from the gutter in the street, and taking it home as to collect. At least not healthy people. So how much do we identify with women, except for my wife? Not at all as objects of my enjoyment. And other people's stuff? Not at all. Garbage. But other people's suffering? Atmavat sarvabhuteshu yapashati sapandita. Atmavat sarvabhuteshu. We do identify with other people's suffering. Their suffering is just like our suffering. It's just the same. And that is what should be the cause of our unhappiness. Paradhukaduki. I'm trying to remember what Raghunath Das said about, do you remember, Sundar? They're an ocean of mercy. and because their only real suffering is to see the suffering of others. So Srila Prabhupada says in his purport to this verse, 727, he says, the illusory energy is manifested in the duality of desire and hate, us and them. Stuff I like, stuff I don't like. People I like, people I don't like. Ideas I like, ideas I don't like. And then, Srila Prabhupada refers to these three enemies, and these three enemies are presented in the 16th chapter, verse 21. Trividham narakasedam, dvaram nashnanatmana, kama krodhas tata lobhas. Lust, anger, and greed. Kama krodhas tata lobhas, tasmade tatrayam chajit. These are three things that we have to give up. We have to give these things up. And so if we were to pray for something, we may pray for whatever selfishness that may remain in our hearts, be ripped out. And my own experience is that chanting with this in mind can be very painful sometimes. Because when you start sweeping, and you go in, just like especially now after just having cut the grass after it had been gotten so long, you can see where I've been, because there's grass clippings. So there's like a trail from the front door into the bathroom there, and inside my hut. Inside my hut, grass clippings. So I got to sweep it every day. But as I sweep it, then it also stirs up other dust. So as we start to, as we ask for the holy name, who actually comes to serve us as a sweeper, as a cleanser of the heart, Cheto Darpana Marjana, the very first of the benefits that we get from chanting the holy name, especially from Nam Sankirtan, or Lila Sankirtan, or Guna Sankirtan, or Rupa Sankirtan, right? All these things. The first benefit we get from this is that the dust from the mirror becomes cleansed so that we can get a sense of who we actually are. It's kind of the same thing that we see at the beginning of the Yoga Sutras. Yoga's chitta vritti nirodha. Yoga means stilling all these agitations in the chitta, in the mind, in the heart, in the intelligence, the consciousness broadly. And then, once that happens, the third sutra says, then the seer can act as it is. And then we can live as pure consciousness. But that cleansing process, that business of stilling these vrittis, these disturbances in the mind, these waves of lust, anger, and greed, can be hard. Just like you see people practice the quiet kinds of meditation, vipassana and Zen meditation. They go on these 10-day set meditation retreats. And people, the first few days, people think they're going to go nuts. Because they're supposed to just sit and watch all the stuff go through their mind and just let it go. Let it go. And it's like, we're used to responding to these things, to these impulses, right? Somebody says something to us, we're used to shooting back. Somebody does something to us, then we're used to figuring out some way to punish them for it. Make them feel sorry. But we just watch, and we're supposed to watch them. And it can be a similar, and actually, if you don't do it right, with the right kind of guidance, people do become mentally disturbed, mentally ill. And there's sometimes quite a lengthy recovery from not properly practicing those kinds of meditation. And so we can also find some disturbances coming up as our heart is becoming cleansed of this selfishness, this hridroga, this heart disease that afflicts us all, that keeps us anchored here in this material world. So, I want to go back. So these three things need to be given up, but I did want to look at Srila Prabhupada's purport to the 7th. I want to look at the whole purport to the verse from the 7th chapter. Srila Prabhupada writes, the real constitutional position of the living entity is that of subordination to the Supreme Lord, who is pure knowledge. When one is deluded into separation from this pure knowledge, there's the duality right there, right? He becomes controlled by the illusory energy and cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The illusory energy is manifested in the duality of desire and hate. Due to desire and hate, the ignorant person wants to become one with the Supreme Lord and envies Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Pure devotees who are not so deluded or contaminated by desire and hate can understand that Lord Sri Krishna appears by his internal potencies, but those who are deluded by duality and nescience think that the Supreme Personality is created by his material energies. This is Mayavadan philosophy. This is the very core. They think that the personality of Godhead, the form of the Godhead, that it's a creation of the material energy. Maya. This is their misfortune. Such deluded persons symptomatically dwell in dualities of dishonor and honor, misery and happiness, woman and man, good and bad, pleasure and pain, etc. thinking. This is my wife, this is my house, I am the master of this house, I am the husband of this wife. These are the dualities of delusion. Those who are so deluded by dualities are completely foolish and therefore cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the Kumaras are thinking, these two fellows, they don't understand what this place is like. We're Atmaramas, we can. Now, there's another thing here, going on here, that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur points out in his commentary on this verse. Those dualities and of desire and hate also seem to have arisen in the hearts of the Kumaras in response to the offense by Jaya and Vijaya, right? So they want to curse them. They want to set things right. We'll see how the Lord deals with this himself a little bit later. Which indicates just how close to his heart the devotees are, even when they make mistakes. I'll stop there. Lali?
I had a question. Jai and Vijay were the gatekeepers to Krishna's personal abode. Now they must
No, excuse me.
What?
You mind if I correct you?
Yes, please.
Narayana's,
Okay, right.
by
Very good.
Kuntaloka.
But now I'm sure these security guards had a standard operating procedure, just like all security guards do, what they can and cannot do and what their field of duties are. Were they fulfilling their field of duties according to their job qualification and they were disqualified for something else? What was it they
So
were doing?
you're looking
in
at,
the job?
you're looking at MRs or DRs? Minimum requirements or desired requirements?
Oh, maybe you're right about that. I don't know. We're splitting here.
This is HR stuff.
Yeah.
I was on hiring, when I taught at Hawaii Community College, I was on a couple of hiring committees, so these are things that we look at. And I also applied for a few dozen college and university jobs. So there's minimum requirements and desired requirements. These are perfect entities, these are perfect beings. They're fulfilling they're serving the Lord how he wants. And here, he made an arrangement in their hearts that they would stop these sages who didn't look like Vaikuntha people, right? To them. And so he created a sense of duality in them, this sense of us in them. Do these kids belong here? Right? I mean, they don't even know how to
They don't know how to dress.
dress properly. I mean, we heard them, somebody mentioned they're being dressed in saffron the other day, but actually they're dressed by the wind. We saw that in a previous verse. And the saffron dresses applied to renounced persons in general, but these guys didn't even, they were Digbijaya, they were dressed by the 10 directions, right? Or a Digambar, Digbijaya is conquering the 10 directions. So they were Digambar, they were clothed by the 10 directions, they're clothed by the wind, as the previous verse describes. So this is all the Lord's arrangement. This is just his special pastime. This is a lila, so that he can enjoy some chivalrous pastimes with his devotees. It's not very appropriate. You can't have you can't go wrestling in Vaikuntha. So much decorum there, so much Aishvarya. Everybody's got to behave according to Maryada, according to the rules and regulations. Just like when Gopakumar went to Vaikuntha Loka and he saw Lord Narayan, looks just like Krishna. saw Lord Narayan, and he says, "Hey, Gopal!" You know, and he started getting all buddy with him, and the other was like, you can't address the Lord of Vaikuntha like that. Gotta behave. Mind yourself. So it's not, so if Lord Narayan had a desire to have this kind of activity, it's not like he could just say, "Hey, Jai and Vijay, let me take the both of you at once. We'll get down here right in front of my throne, and Lakshmi can watch all the fun." It ain't like that in Vaikuntha. Much more decorum. Maryada is the rule there. That place is approached by Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, which, as Rupa Goswami points out at the end of in the second chapter, later in the second chapter, is referred to by other groups, such as the Pushti Marg, as Maryada, proper decorum. Whereas Lord Krishna's personal abode, Vrindavan, can only be approached by raga, by intense desire to serve Krishna. Raga. So the devotees engage in raga and nuga bhakti to get there. So in the material world, there's a possibility for some sparring between the Lord and his devotee, but not in Vaikuntha. So the Lord made this arrangement. So they're just doing their job. They're just doing what's right. Like I said the other day, they behaved in this way. When they made their choice, right? When they made their choice as to whether they would take birth 7 times as devotees or 3 times as demons, they understood the Lord's heart. The Lord wanted this kind of opportunity to spar, to let loose a little steam. So they said, okay, 3 times as devotees. One way to understand it is, it sounds quicker, although it was kind of a long time. Over yugas, right? Over many yugas. Is that okay? I haven't seen the job descriptions for the gatekeepers. Either the first gatekeepers, the 4th gatekeepers, or the 7th gatekeepers.
You shall not pass.
But the idea is loving service to Krishna. So here their service entailed creating this little kerfuffle so that they could be cursed, and then we'll see how the Lord responds to the whole thing a little later on.
There's nothing like a good kerfuffle.
Anything else?
Jai.
Gopal? No, I'm not. Okay. Thank you so much. Bhaktaraj, Bhagavatam ki jai. Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki